Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day. My name is Nurul Afika binti Muhammad Zani, and today I'll be presenting on assessment issues in Malaysian ESL classrooms, focusing on language assessment literacy (LAL) and written corrective feedback (WCF). So this presentation is for TSLB 2082R language assessment in the primary ESL classroom. So for introduction, I will explain about language assessment. So language assessment is the evaluation of learners' language abilities in four major skills, which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So language assessments help teachers to measure progress, identify learning needs, and guide instructions for the students. Other than that, language assessments also provide meaningful feedback to support language development and improve learning outcomes. So, what are LAL and WCF? So, LAL or Language Assessment Literacy is a teacher's ability to design, administer, and interpret assessments. Meanwhile, WCF or Written Corrective Feedback is how teachers provide feedback on students' writing to improve language accuracy. So, why are these important? Firstly, LAL or Language Assessment Literacy is important because it impacts grading, feedback, and reporting accuracy. WCF or written corrective feedback, on the other hand, affects students' motivation and language learning outcomes. So the key problems in Malaysian ESL classrooms are divided into two, which are LAL or Language Assessment Literacy and WCF or Written Corrective Feedback. What are the issues for LAL? Firstly, the teachers struggle with formative versus summative assessment, CEFR alignment, and providing meaningful feedback. For WCF or written corrective feedback, the teachers struggle with unstructured correction methods, excessive marking, and unclear feedback. Now, let's see how do these affect students. Firstly, unfair grading. When the assessments lack clear criteria or very inconsistent, this causes the students' grades to not reflect the students' true ability. Other than that, this can cause confusion, frustration, and lack of trust in the learning process. Next is lack of meaningful feedback. Vague, overly critical feedback or limited to marks and grades will make it difficult for students to understand their mistakes or how to improve their grades or learning potential. They also struggle to develop their language skills effectively. Last one is the motivation in learning. Inconsistent assessment and poor feedback would discourage the students. They will feel not confident, lose their confidence and interest in learning and language when efforts aren't properly acknowledged. Therefore, the teachers must put effort to make sure that the grading is fair and put effort to provide meaningful feedback so that the students can be more motivated in learning. First, let's look at the language assessment literacy issues. So, these issues stem from limited teacher training, lack of confidence, and a strong focus on exam based assessment. Many teachers they struggle to design fair, meaningful assessment or provide effective feedback. Without proper LAL or language assessment literacy, teachers may misjudge students' abilities or miss opportunities to support learning. Addressing this issue is crucial to ensure accurate assessment, better teaching practices, and improve students' outcomes when it comes to their English language learning. Now, let's look at the first problem for LAL, which is the summative versus formative assessment. So, the current practice right now is the teachers focus more on exam, which is summative which is summative assessment, then continuous feedback, which is formative assessment. Grading is numerical based with minimal descriptive feedback. The weakness of this is it does not track language progress effectively. And then the students they tend to cram for exam instead of learning for improvement. To improve this, teachers could use more formative assessment, for example, projects, portfolio, self-assessment or peer assessment. Other than that, teachers can also provide descriptive feedback alongside the grades. And the teachers training schools should train teachers in balanced assessment strategies instead of just using either one, either it's summative or formative. The next problem is the CEFR misalignment. So currently, the CEFR descriptors are used in the exams, but teaching methods do not align with the CEFR descriptors. Therefore, the teachers they struggle to assess the speaking and writing parts with CEFR rubrics. The weakness of this is that there's no clear assessment templates for the teachers and the CEFR grading feels subjective and inconsistent. To improve, the teachers can be provided with ready to use CEFR aligned rubrics. Other than that, teachers can also be trained in practical CEFR assessment. In class, the students can also be encouraged to use peer assessment and also self assessment. Next is the ineffective feedback. So currently, the feedback is vague. For example, teachers only write comments like need improvement instead of specify the areas that the students need to work on. For example, their grammar or any parts of their grammars like their tenses or their sentence structures. Report cards also use grades instead of narrative feedback. So currently, the report cards use the TP1 up until TP6 instead of providing a narrative feedback on how the students can improve their language or any other subjects. The weakness to this is the students they don't know how to improve, and some of the parents they do not understand the feedback. So to improve this, the teachers can use the feedback framework, for example, like sandwich feedback. For example, the teachers can give positive comments and then highlight the errors that the students did in the work or in the assignments, and then provide suggestions on how the students can improve their writing skills, reading skills, or any of their speaking or listening skills. Then, the teachers can also introduce verbal or audio feedback using technology, for example, WhatsApp voice notes or using Flip. Lastly, teachers can also use competency skills, for example, emerging, developing, and proficient. Next, we move on to the written corrective feedback WCF issues. So these issues arise from inconsistency practices, limited teacher training, and time constraints in large classrooms. So many ESL teachers they rely heavily on marking grammar and spelling without giving constructive feedback. Factors include exam pressure, lack of WCF knowledge and workload, and addressing these issues is important to help students understand their errors, improve their writing skills, to become more confident, and to become more independent language users. Effective WCF supports long term learning and meaningful language development. So, the first WCF problem is the unstructured feedback. So the current practice right now, teachers underline mistakes but don't explain corrections. Or some use direct corrections without letting the students reflect. So the weakness for this practice is the students they don't understand how to fix error and there's no engagement with the feedback. So to improve this, teachers can provide hints with error marking. For example, check your verb tense instead of correcting it. Teachers can also train students in peer assessment or self assessment by using correction journals, for example. The next WCF problem is the minimal students' reflection. So what happens right now is the students they receive feedback but they do not analyze on their own mistakes. Plus, teachers don't give opportunities for revision. The weakness of this is that WCF become a one-time correction, not a learning tool. So, using error logs or journals for students to track their repeated mistakes can help them to revise after the feedback. So, this is how they can reflect on their own mistakes and then to analyze their own mistakes. And teachers could also conduct oral feedback sessions where they explain to their students, okay, what are the errors that they have made, how to correct these errors, or what to be careful of to avoid doing or making the same errors in future. So last one, the SWOT analysis of LAL and WCF issues. So let's focus on the LAL first. LAL or Language Assessment Literacy. The strength is if teachers use LAL, they should have basic assessment knowledge. But the weakness what's happening right now is the teachers rely heavily on summative grading instead of formative grading. However, we can see that the CEFR aligned training and resources are out there and can be used. So these are the opportunities that the teachers must use and must take on instead of resisting to change, instead of just focusing on using the summative and refusing to start using the formative assessment. The next one is WCF. So the strength of WCF is that when teachers use WCF, they can provide more detailed feedback for the students. However, the inconsistent WCF approaches can cause problems because it can cause confusion to the students. It can cause them to be more depressed and demotivated to learn. However, there are a lot of AI tools that the teachers can use for the feedback for them to provide feedback or to construct feedback for the students. For example, there are school AI that the teachers can use. However, providing very personalized feedback for each one of the students, considering the size of the class, can be a very stressful workload for the teachers. So the takeaway for these issues are firstly, teachers need more training in both LAL and WCF practices. Some small changes need to be done. For example, the feedback techniques, the self-assessment, and these small changes, although these small changes are just small changes, it can make big difference and help students and both students and teachers in the learning process. So to conclude, teachers should be trained in balanced assessment strategies, and they need to use CEFR aligned rubrics and self assessment tools to help improve the feedback clarity by using frameworks and technology to help them. And they should also adopt selective marking and structured WCF techniques in their marking the students' classwork. So before I end, this sentence, better assessment and feedback lead to better students' learning outcomes. So thank you for listening.